Oh, testing. 好啦，有聲啦。Okay, so welcome back to our part 3 of our chapter 25 video, in which this time we are going to move away from balance of payment and we are going to talk about exchange rate. First of all, the general theories about exchange rate, and in our next video and final part of our chapter 25, we are going to look at specifically the linked exchange rate system in Hong Kong. Okay, so let's get started. Now, here, you see the definition of exchange rate. In fact, nothing too important. Exchange rate is simply the price of a currency in terms of other currency. 係咪？嗱，呢句你應該識㗎啦。Okay. Now remember, when we talk about exchange rate, it's always relative to 2 or more currency. You can't just talk about Hong Kong. Let's say Hong Kong dollar appreciate. No. Against something. 你要講清楚係對邊個嘅，得唔得？ It's always relative. All right, so in this world, there are 2 types of systems of exchange rate. Okay, now the first type of system, we call it the floating exchange rate. Basically, exchange rate determined by market demand and market supply. Okay, another type would be, 既然有 floating, 會有咩啊? Of course, we have the fixed exchange rate, which would be controlled by the government or central bank. Okay, and then there are some terminologies we need to know, right? For example, when the value of a currency rises, now depending on the type of system, if it is a floating exchange rate system, then we call it appreciation, 升值. Okay, if it is a fixed exchange rate system, we call it revaluation. 嗱，個名唔同啫。The idea is exactly the same. All right. Now, for value drops, we call it depreciation in the case of floating exchange rate. And in the case of a fixed exchange rate system, we call it devaluation. Again, just a difference in name. The ideas are exactly the same. Okay, 好嘛？嗱 I think exchange rate shouldn't be too difficult for you. So let's look at some example here. Okay, now figuratively speaking, let's talk about numbers. 好嘛？我哋用 number 嚟計啦。In this case, you see, 1 Hong Kong dollar originally can be exchanged for 10. Now, 1 Hong Kong dollar can be exchanged for double the amount of Japanese yen. So how would we describe this? We describe as Hong Kong dollar appreciates. Now we are assuming actually Hong Kong, the market is a partly floating system. So Hong Kong dollar appreciates, 嗱唔好停啊 appreciates against 你寫清楚啊 against Japanese yen, or another way to present this would be Japanese yen depreciates against Hong Kong dollar. Okay, now these 2 are exactly the same. 得唔得？係同一句說話嚟㗎。Okay， 好嘛？ So you see, right? Figuratively speaking, it's not that difficult. Then what is the difficult part? The difficult part is actually on the next page. Okay, on the next page. Now consider again. Now the exchange rate. 1 Hong Kong dollar to 10 Japanese yen. 1 Hong Kong dollar becomes 20 Japanese yen. Okay, now in fact, let's talk about this story using a story. Okay, 好嘛？我哋真係俾啲數字啦。For example, let's say the Big Mac in Hong Kong. 嗱，我哋講香港嘅 Big Mac 啦。Of course, right? We are using Hong Kong dollar. Let's assume it used to be let's say $100, right? $100. Now in the old time, 好啦，之前啦 okay, before the exchange rate changes, how much would it be in terms of Japanese yen? 好啦，有日 yen 計會幾多啊？ In terms of Japanese yen, it would be 1,000. 係咪？乘10啊嘛。All right, so what happens after the change in exchange rate? 會發生咩事啊？ Again, Big Mac in Hong Kong. 喂，匯率變咗會唔會無端端影響你嘅價錢啊？ No. Remember, now we are in Hong Kong. Even if Hong Kong dollar appreciate or depreciate, it would not affect the price of local goods. 本地嗰啲關匯率咩事啊？ So Big Mac will stay at this amount of money. What about Japanese yen? Japanese yen, suddenly the price of a Big Mac would be doubled. Okay, because of the change in exchange rate. Now, so do you see? The story goes like this. 嗱，既然我哋有數字啦 now we can populate this table, right? Now we are talking about from the perspective of Hong Kong. 嗱，我哋而家香港啦嘛 So the local goods would be, let's say, the Hong Kong Big Mac. Okay, the Big Mac in Hong Kong would be our local goods. 好啦 with a change of exchange rate, is there any change in the price in terms of local Hong Kong dollar? It would be unchanged. 見唔見啊？唔會變㗎。Now, what about foreign price? In foreign country, let's say in JPY, all right? What happens? The price would increases. Okay, 得唔得？ Now, think about it. What happens to the quantity? Now, when we talk about the quantity, right? For Hong Kong people, nothing changed. But more importantly, for Japanese people, price have increased. So, the quantity from Japan would decrease by the law of demand. 係咪？日本人覺得貴咗，日本人唔買咁多咯。Remember, when Japanese people buying things from Hong Kong, what is it? It's actually export volume. The volume of export would decrease. Okay? 得唔得？ So, this is one. Now, let's talk about another goods. 好啦，我哋而家唔講 Big Mac 啦。Let's change it into, let's say, at this time, a Japanese good. Let's say the Pokemon from Japan. Okay, 好嗎？ Now, let's assume it used to be this amount, 1,000 Japanese yen. So, in terms of Hong Kong dollar, it would be 100 to begin. Now, after the change in exchange rate, Pokemon also. Now, remember, in Japan, the price would not change. Price of local goods would not change. 係咪？冇變到啊？ What about in terms of Hong Kong dollar? 港幣升值啊嘛，所以咪平咗啦。It becomes 50. Okay, it becomes 50. 好嘛？ So, with this story, we would know that when Hong Kong dollar appreciates, what happened? Let's say the foreign goods being Pokemon from Japan, 日本嘅 Pokemon 啦。So, in terms of our local price, Hong Kong dollar, what happened? We see it actually would decrease. What about Japanese yen? Unchanged. In terms of Japanese yen, it is unchanged. So, 好啦 for Japanese people, obviously nothing happens. But what about Hong Kong people? Would we buy more or buy less? Obviously, we are going to buy more, right? 係咪啊？ The quantity of import, okay, quantity of import. So the above will be quantity of export, right? By the law of demand, it would be increased. Okay, 得唔得？好啦，嗱下面呢格咧，嗱 my suggestion, actually let us delete it for easy understanding. Okay, let us delete it for easy understanding. 好嘛 So here, this table. Now, once you understand, then in examination, I think you can already imagine we have some problem. The problem is with these four boxes. There are two prices. Okay, so in examination, how would they ask? 嗱，記住啦 this is the volume or quantity of import-export. What about the value Okay, value of, let's say, export of Hong Kong Big Mac. There are two values. First, in terms of Hong Kong dollar. 好啦，我哋睇下點計啦。It should be the price of Hong Kong dollar times the quantity, right? We definitely know. 我哋絕對知道啊 ，quantity has dropped. What about price in terms of Hong Kong dollar? 咁香港港幣有冇變啊 ？Unchanged right now. 而家咪不變啊 ？Unchanged times decreased. We are sure the value of export in terms of Hong Kong dollar would decrease. 好啦 ，Now what about if we do not talk about Hong Kong dollar? Value of export of Hong Kong Big Mac. But this time, let's measure in Japanese yen. So what happens is that price of Japanese yen times quantity. Now definitely we know again quantity has dropped, right? Now what about the price in Japanese yen? 我哋上面見到啦 it has increased. No. Here, it has increased. 一個升一個跌 So what happens to the value of export in terms of Japanese yen? Actually, it will be uncertain. 其實你唔知㗎 unless you are given the elasticity. Okay? 好嗎 By the same token, they can also ask you something funny about the value of import. 好嗎 Now, value of import of Pokemon from Japan. Okay? 好嗎 Now, there are two ways to ask you in terms of Hong Kong dollar. Same, it will be Hong Kong dollar times quantity. Definitely, quantity would increase. What about price in terms of Hong Kong dollar? It would it would decrease from our table, right? 一個升一個跌 So what happens is actually uncertain unless you are given the elasticity of demand. OK, 好啦，最後啦。Then what about the value of import of Pokemon in terms of Japanese yen? 好啦，日 yen 會點啊 ？Hong Kong Japanese yen times quantity. Now we know quantity would increase. Now what about price of Japanese yen? We know it would be unchanged. Therefore, we know unchanged times increase. It would result in an increase in the value. 得唔得？ Now, so you see, it can be quite complicated in examination because there are 4 ways to ask you. Okay, now have you noticed something special? Let's look at this again. Hong Kong goods using Hong Kong dollar, certain answer. Japanese good using Japanese dollar, answer certain. Hong Kong goods, Japanese yen, uncertain. Japanese good, Hong Kong dollar, uncertain. What does that mean? It means that, in fact, we can have a shortcut of sort. What is the shortcut? The shortcut is that if the origin of the good, Hong Kong goods, for example, equals to the origin of currency, 如果呢兩個係對嘅話呢 we would be certain about the change in value. P times Q. We would be certain. Otherwise, we would be uncertain about it unless you are given the elasticity of demand. Okay, 得唔得？ So this table, okay, this story, my advice, when you do your revision, make sure you study this part. Okay, until you know the logic behind. Okay, exchange rate 係咁多㗎啦。Theory wise, it's only about this. Then let's proceed to look at a lot of questions. Okay, 好嗎？ A lot. Actually, I think we missed out one question in our previous notes. In our previous, yes, here. Let's go back to our page 14. 我哋翻返第14版啊，好嗎？ Now on page 14, here 睇住啦噃。Here, question 2013, question 37. 好啦， a country's currency appreciates against trading partner currency. Okay, 好嘛？好啦，嗱 ，think about it. When we appreciate, so what happened to import? 嗱，記住啦，我升值嘅話咧 ，quantity of import would increase. 得唔得？ Why it would increase? Because the price in terms of the local currency, okay, ENCY currency would decrease. 見唔見啊？ Now it asks you the total import value in terms of domestic currency, local currency. 你見唔見啊？ P 跌 Q 升 ，OK? P decrease, Q increase. So how would the value change? Okay? Now actually we need to try it. Okay? 好嘛？ Now remember how we do it. If you remember, 係嘛？ 哇，真係好耐之前咯。Remember, value equals to P times Q, right? Now, for now, we are sure the value, the price would double decrease, right? So let's see what happens. If it is a unitarily elastic demand, then it means Q would drop by to the same amount of error. Therefore, the value should be unchanged, right? So A is not the answer. Now what about B? If it is inelastic, then quantity would drop slower, balancing the equation. 係咪？呢度一 no actually increase. Sorry, 應該升先啦嘛，搞錯咗。These two, it should be increase, increase. Okay, now if it is inelastic, then the rise will be slower, 係嘛？ slower than the drop, percentage drop in price, meaning value would drop, not rise, 係嘛？好啦 so the answer would be D here. Inelastic, it should drop. Okay, 好嘛？嗱 so this is only going back to our elasticity. Only that this time we need to determine what appreciate or depreciate would lead to. Okay, 好唔好啊？ All right, so let's move on. Here, let's go back to page 19. Okay, page 19. Let's look at it one by one. Now here, what would be the result of the following change in between Hong Kong dollar and Japanese yen? 嗱，我哋望一望個 table 先啦。Here, now we are using less Hong Kong dollar to exchange for the same amount of Japanese yen. So from this table, we know that Hong Kong dollar actually appreciates against Japanese yen. 嗱，記住啦 ，whenever we appreciate, what happens? Quantity of import increases. Quantity of export decreases for Hong Kong. Okay, for Hong Kong. 好嘛？好啦 so let's see. The volume of imported goods from Japan to Hong Kong would increase. Yes, for a very good reason, right? 係咪 for a simple reason, because the price in terms of Hong Kong dollar would drop. 用港幣計平咗啊啲嘢，得唔得？ Okay, so number one is correct. Now, what about number two? The number of Japanese tourists to Hong Kong would increase. Now, remember, Japanese tourists coming to Hong Kong is an export of service. Remember, now everything in Hong Kong in terms of Japanese yen would increase. Therefore, okay, our export should decrease instead. So number 2 not correct. So answer 1 and 3. The prices of exported goods in terms of Japanese yen would increase. Yes, we just talked about it. So answer would be 1 and 3. 得唔得？ 1同3啦。Alright, so next one. Here, question 48 of 2004. Now, which of the following situation will export volume of a country increase? We need export quantity of export to increase, right? 好啦， an increase in the tariff on import, it will make import decrease. 而家收多咗關稅，入口關稅收多咗，咪唔入口咁多咯。We will decrease our import, right? But does it have anything to do with export? No, 唔關你事。Okay, another one. Depreciation of domestic currency. Remember, I always say local depreciation. Then our export, I should say, quantity of export increase. Okay, quantity of import decrease. Oh, actually, no, sorry. Depreciate, export, yes, export increase, import decrease. Yes, 冇錯。Okay, 好嘛 ，so export volume increase. Number 2 is correct. 咁啊倒轉啦，3係咪啱啱倒轉啦 ？So no, answer 2 and 4. Now 4, an increase in the income for trading partner 係嘛 ？So demand from overseas for our export would increase 係嘛？咁啊 export 多咗咯。So 2 and 4 are correct. Okay, 好唔好啊 ？Now, next question. Import volume from Japan increase. We need import to increase. So let's see. First, income of Hong Kong people falls. No, actually, when we have lower disposable income, 當我哋 disposable income 跌啦 so our demand for Japanese import would also decrease. 冇咁多錢啊，唔買咯，係嘛？ So import volume decrease, not increase. Okay. Now B, the national income of Japanese rise. 喂，日本人升咗，關你香港 import volume 咩事啊 ？Nothing to do with your import volume. Okay， 好嘛 ？What about C? Exchange rate 6.7 to 6.9. Now that means 會發生咩事啦？係嘛 ？Right now, Hong Kong dollar depreciates against Japanese yen. 係咪而家貶值啊？而家港幣 ？Okay. Now therefore, our quantity of import. 喂，既然我貶值，我入唔入口咁多嘢啊 ？No, actually it would decrease. So the answer should be D. Hong Kong economy is in recovery state. When we are in recovery state, it means that our disposable income will increase. Therefore, you know, demand for Japanese import increases. 我哋會買多啲啦，我哋有錢咗啊。Okay, so answer would be D in this case. 係嘛 ？Not exactly too difficult. 好啦，繼續啦。Now here, let's look at this question. Actually, this question and the next question, I think we should leave it for next time when we talk about the next video. Because in the next video, we are going to talk a little bit about arbitrage. Okay, arbitrage. Okay. Oh, let's try it. Let's try it anyway. 好嘛，照做啦，好嘛。Here, Mr. Wong used, 係嘛？ So what happened is that he used, 係嘛？ So he paid Hong Kong dollar. Then he received. Now on day 1, this amount of Hong Kong dollar should exchange for 嗱你自己計啦。Okay, here 1 Hong Kong dollar to 0.83 renminbi. So he will receive this amount of renminbi. Okay, 好嘛？ Now next day he sell the renminbi to get Hong Kong dollar. okay, to obtain, obtain at the exchange rate, he paid this amount of renminbi, then he would receive how much Hong Kong dollar? It should be this divided by 0.77. That would give us how much? 嗱，撳下機先，係咪匯率大家應該識計啦 ？Divided by 0.77, it will be 10779 Hong Kong dollar. All right. So, what would be the net change? It would be like this. 嗱 ，pay 係減啊嘛，係咪啊 ？minus 10K Hong Kong dollar, then plus 8.3K renminbi. Next day, minus 8.3K renminbi plus 10779 Hong Kong dollar. At the end, you will see that you have gained 779 Hong Kong dollar. Answer would be D. OK， 得唔得啊？嗱，唔係好多人計啱啫 ，only 57%. OK， now same here. Let's go to the next question. OK, question 2019, question 45. 嗱，得45% 啫，係咪 ？And it is in the report. OK, now here, study the price of iPhone X in terms of Hong Kong dollar and in terms of mainland, right? Renminbi. Now, given the exchange rate is this amount and this amount, 係咪？1 Hong Kong dollar to this amount of renminbi. 好啦 ，now in order to compare their price, we need one of them to change. Let's change the mainland price into Hong Kong price. In terms of Hong Kong dollar, it should be 8316 divided by 0.875. 即係會係幾多啊？望望先。我撳下，等我好快啊。It should be 8316 divided by 0.875. It would be this amount 9564 04， 哇都幾貴啊嗬，9000幾爭成千銀啊，係嘛 ？So traveler tend to buy an iPhone X in mainland instead of in Hong Kong. No, 係嘛 ？Because in Hong Kong it's actually way cheaper, 係咪 ？Way cheaper, so they will buy in Hong Kong instead. Renminbi is undervalued as the price of an iPhone X is lower than that of Hong Kong. No, we see it's actually is much higher than that of Hong Kong. 貴好多其實，係嘛 ？Now what about C? If the transportation cost, then it's this amount. Then buying an iPhone in Hong Kong and reselling it in mainland will no longer gain. 唔會再賺啦。嗱 ，let's see how much we can gain as of now. The gain 好啦，而家會賺幾多啊？喺炒 iPhone 嘅話 ，it should be this amount minus this amount, and that should give us yes, it should give us a profit of this amount, right? 你淨係賺916。What if the cost is higher than this? Then unfortunately, you will lose money, 係嘛 ？So it would no longer gain, which is our answer. C will be our answer. OK， 好嘛？好啦，睇住啦噃。The potential gain from buy low, sell high will disappear if the price of the iPhone in Hong Kong is higher than this. Let's pretend it is this amount. 如果1萬蚊啦 if it is 100, 10,000, then can you do the buy low, sell high? Actually, yes. Buy in mainland, sell in Hong Kong. 可以倒轉嚟做噶嘛，係嘛 ？You can do it the other way round. Okay, so as long as, remember, as long as there is a difference in price, then they can still profit from buy low, sell high. It only changes the direction. Okay, 得唔得？ Okay, answer would be C in this question. 嗱，唔知點解咁難啊？ It's not difficult at all. I don't know what's going on. Okay, 好嗎？ Now, what about this? 睇下仲有幾多條啊？ Yes, only a few more questions to go. Now, what about this? 2020. Okay, 2020. 好啦, now the following table shows the change in exchange rate of euro against something, right? 係嘛? Now you see, originally 1 euro for this amount, then 1 euro for this amount. 好啦，睇住啦喎。What happens? We know that euro has actually depreciated against US dollar, or you can say US dollar appreciates against euro. Okay, 好嗎? So the above exchange rate would lead to a decrease in something, right? Let's see, decrease in what? First, the number of European tourists visiting the US. Remember, when euro depreciates, it means when the European visitors go to US, price in terms of euro would increase. 會升喎. Therefore, quantity should decrease. 係喎，應該少咗人去美國嘅喎 because euro right now, right 係咪啊? It can exchange for less US dollar, meaning it has depreciated. 嚇，所以 A 就係答案啦。A is already the answer. Now what about B and C and D? Volume of goods exported from euro to the US 係嘛? Remember, because the price in terms of 喂，做乜打錯嘅 US dollar has decreased. Actually, the quantity would increase. 美國會買多啲歐洲嘢啊 because in terms of US dollar, the European goods becomes cheaper. Okay? 好啦 C and D 睇住 the shortcut is total value of US export. We are talking about US goods. In terms of euro, do they match? They do not match. Therefore, uncertain. 記唔記得頭先我講啦 Only when it matches, then you can be certain about the answer. Same. Total value of European export to the US. We are talking about EU goods. But in USD, doesn't match. Therefore, uncertain. Okay? 得唔得? So, answer will be A. 得唔得? Okay, so these would be all the MCs. Now, as we go to the short questions, we need to finally learn how to draw graphs. Okay, 我哋畫圖啦，終於要，好嘛？好啦 In Hong Kong, many fashion items are imported from Europe. Okay, now suppose the US dollar, 呢條未識嘅喎 Okay, now let me give you a hint first. We haven't learned linked exchange rate system. Okay, now but remember, because of our linked exchange rate system, when US dollar depreciates, it also means Hong Kong dollar would depreciate. 好啦 When Hong Kong dollar depreciates against euro, we know that price in terms of Hong Kong dollar of the European goods would decrease. Not actually, increase. Okay, 好嘛 So here, 我應該抄落嚟啊 I should copy down there. Okay, when US dollar depreciates, Hong Kong dollar also depreciates. It means the price in terms of Hong Kong dollar, 係咪佢叫你啊 in terms of Hong Kong dollar would increase. Because of the law of demand, quantity of import from Europe would decrease. Okay, 望望啦 Then, what about the total import value? Remember, value equals to price in terms of Hong Kong dollar times quantity. Now, we know price would increase. And we know quantity would decrease, right? Under what situation would the value decrease? 幾時個 value 會跌啊？ Okay, we need quantity to drop more 啊，跌啊嘛，係咪？ We need it to drop more. So when quantity is dropping faster in terms of percentage than price, what do we call this? We call this elastic demand. When the demand is elastic, then the value of import would decrease. Okay, what about the diagram? In fact, the diagram would just be the exact same as we have learned in our demand supply chapter, but let's do a simple revision. Okay, 我等我抄咗先啊。Elastic, okay. Elastic. Let me see. 我睇下有冇睇錯先，俾幾秒我啊，望下有冇睇錯先。OK， 嗱 ，US dollar depreciate, Hong Kong dollar depreciate, then total import Hong Kong dollar increase. Yes. OK， 好啦 ，value would decrease. 好啦，嗱 ，let's see here. OK。Now, how do we draw the diagram? If you still remember, now, when we talk about elasticity, 記住啦, you draw the demand curve like this, a very normal demand curve. Don't do anything funny with the slope. 唔好搞任何嘢. Okay? Now, this is our midpoint. Remember, elastic, it should be in the above point. 係嘛 above midpoint 係咪應該高過個 midpoint 啊 So here you see, let's draw all the increase in price above the midpoint. This will be our point at price 1. This will be our price 2. And this will be our Q1. This will be our Q2. You see, price increase, quantity decrease. 好啦，既然since quantity dropped, so would you gain more or gain less? This part would be our loss. Since you are selling more expensive, this part are actually, sorry, this is price in terms of Hong Kong dollar. 寫清楚啊 OK, 得唔得 The price here, it will be our gain. Definitely, our loss is bigger than the gain. Therefore, the value, total value, would decrease. Okay, now this is exactly the same as what we have learned in our demand supply chapter. Okay, in our chapter 10. So it's time to revise those chapters. Okay, now let's move on to our next question then. Now the next question, 2006. Now again, you are given a table like this. You are given a table like this. Here. Now, what is this? This is euro. This is Hong Kong dollar. You see now, euro has appreciated against Hong Kong dollar, or we can say Hong Kong dollar has depreciated against euro. 係咪？而家佢貶值喎，港幣貶值喎。OK， 好嘛？ So suppose during this period, the price of European cars, okay, imported in Hong Kong did not change. Now, how it would affect the price of European car imported into Hong Kong? Now, remember, right? Very easy. Since Hong Kong dollar is worth less euro, after the change. Therefore, we know, 係嘛? The price of European car has not changed. So the price in terms of Hong Kong dollar would increase 貴咗咯，好嘛？好啦， now number 2, with the aid of the diagram, explain why the above change in exchange rate could lead to an increase in total expenditure. 好啦，照舊啦。Remember, total expenditure equals to price 嗱，而家 in terms of Hong Kong dollar 啊嘛 ，of Hong Kong dollar times quantity. We definitely know the price in terms of Hong Kong dollar has increased. 好啦 ，under what situation would the total expenditure increase? Now we know quantity must drop, right? By the law of demand. The situation only one arrow down. 好啦，而家我哋知道 quantity 係慢啲喎。What do we call this? We call this inelastic demand. Okay? When the demand is inelastic, then the percentage drop in quantity will be smaller than the percentage increase, percentage rise in price. Therefore, total value would increase. Okay, inelastic demand. So, do you remember how to draw inelastic demand? Hopefully, you still remember. Let's come to here. 好啦 ，inelastic 點啊？呢度咯。Inelastic demand 係下低少少先。Yeah, inelastic. We draw it like this. 係嘛 ？This is price in terms of Hong Kong dollar. 得唔得？好啦 ，this is quantity. Now since inelastic， 頭先我哋啱啱揾咗啦 ，elastic above it. So what about inelastic? Draw it below the midpoint. The price rise in below midpoint here. P2, Q1, Q2 decreases. So you see, right? Here, you sell less. Therefore, this is your loss. But you sell higher prices. This is your gain. Now, gain bigger than loss. Therefore, value would increase. Okay, just like that. This is what we have learned in our demand supply chapter. Nothing new, nothing new. Just our demand supply chapter. Okay, 好嘛? So let me not waste too much time here because the next part would be quite funny. 好啦，我哋睇埋最後一 part 啦。Here, the last part asks you explain how the above change in the exchange rate would affect the total value. 好啦，咁會點樣影響個 total? In terms of European euro, right? 好啦，記住啦 ，price in terms of euro doesn't change, right? What happens to our quantity? Quantity decreased. 一個不變，一個跌。We are certain the value in terms of euro would drop. Definitely. Okay? 得唔得？ Definitely. But how do we draw the diagram? How? 諗諗好嘛？好啦，嗱 ，assume 你諗完啦。Here, let's draw it together. Price in terms of euro. We know the price doesn't change. It's always P1. But now quantity needs to drop. 咩情況之下 price 會不變，但係 quantity 會跌啊 ？Only one situation, and that situation will be a drop in demand. Demand 跌咪得咯 ？Okay, so it will be Q2, drop all the way here, and the loss in value. Okay, this will be our loss in value. Now, so do you see, right? When P and Q both changes, it is a shift movement along the curve. But when one of them, namely price doesn't change, it is in fact a change in demand. Okay? 得唔得啊？好緊要啊 ！Please familiarize yourself with this. Okay? So, if okay, let us move on. 我哋做多幾條啦，咁我哋就收工啦。Alright, next one. 仲有幾多條啊？2011, 12, 14. Okay, 3 more to go. We should be very quick. Alright, here, the exchange rate 好啦 has been urging to revalue renminbi in order to reduce the value of US import. 好啦 explain how our revaluation would affect the quantity of US import from China. Okay, remember when renminbi revalues, then the price in terms of US dollar would increase. 人民幣貴咗啊，所以你攞美金嚟計會貴咗咯。Meaning the quantity of import from China would decrease. Okay, 冇嘢好解。Now, number 2, explain under what conditions the total value of US import in terms of US dollar 好啦 from China would increase due to revaluation. 好啦，我哋望望啦。Remember, value equals to P. Now this time, in terms of US dollar. Okay, 好嘛 US dollar times quantity. Now we know price 係嘛？啱啱先講完啦。It would increase. So under what situation would the value increase? We need quantity to drop slower. What do we call this? This is what we call inelastic demand, meaning the percentage drop in Q will be smaller than percentage rise in price of USD price. Okay, 好嘛? So the diagram, I'm not going to draw it again. It's exactly the same as the one we have drawn in A2. Okay, 我唔再畫啦，好冇？好啦 so you see, right? Actually, no creativity. You do it again and again 做嚟做去三幅被嘅咋，好嘛？ Alright, so next question. A country's currency depreciates. Will the depreciation necessarily lower total import? 啊，慢慢啦 in terms of domestic currency， 慢慢嚟啦。嗱 when local depreciates, what happen? 我哋貶值啦，係咪？ So quantity of import would decrease because the price in terms of local currency would increase, right? 好啦 under 嗱佢話啦 would it necessarily in terms of domestic currency 嗱 just think about it value, okay, import value equals to price in terms of local currency times quantity of import. Now we know the price of local currency would increase, right? Sorry, 你做乜嘢啊 ？Now we also know quantity would decrease, right? But would it necessarily make it drop? Can it be the case that when import value increase? Yes. When the situation, when quantity drops lower. So what do we call this? Again, this is inelastic demand. 又係 inelastic 啦。Meaning percentage drop in Q smaller than percentage rise in price in terms of local currency. 好嘛？嗱，又係 inelastic 啦。I'm not going to draw it again. Okay, just copy the diagram above. 好嘛？ Alright, so this is done. Now one final question before we end this chapter. Okay, 睇住啦。Now the following table shows this amount, right? 係嘛？ 1 unit of Hong Kong dollar can be exchanged for more yen, meaning from this table, Hong Kong dollar has appreciated against Japanese yen. 好嘛？ Alright, so what happens is that remember, 係嘛？既然佢而家問咩啊 ？Increase in export or to Hong Kong. 嗱 Japanese export to Hong Kong, it means our import. 人哋嘅 export 即係我嘅 import 啦，係咪？ Quantity of import would decrease because in terms of Hong Kong dollar, the price has 唔係喎，錯咗 appreciate 喎。So it should increase. Price has decreased. Okay? 好嘛？ So we need to explain why the above change would lead to an increase in total export value. 點解會 total 嗱 actually 佢哋呃嚟㗎 not total export value but total import from Japan. So import value in terms of yen, okay 係嘛 would be this one price 今次 yen 啊係咪 so price of in terms of yen will be unchanged times 好啦 what happens to the quantity 嗱記住我哋前面解咗啦係咪啊 quantity of import would increase okay 好嘛 quantity of import increase unchanged increase necessarily would lead to an increase. Okay, this is why. What about the diagram? Let's quickly. 我都差唔多要上第二堂啦，所以快少少啦，好冇 ？The diagram would go something like this. 記住啊 ，price in terms of Japanese yen quantity. We know the price, now this is our demand one, price has not changed, P1, but quantity has increased. So what is the situation? 點解 P 不變 Q 會升啊 The only possibility is when demand increases. Okay, D2. This will be quantity 2. So this part would be our gain in the value. Okay, diagram, 係嘛 The diagram would be like this, increase in demand. Okay, and with that out of the way, we are actually done with this video. So for the next and last video, we are going to talk about the linked exchange rate system in Hong Kong. Okay, until then, I see you again in our next video. Bye bye.